Scorsese's classic gave us a raw glimpse into the everyday world of the mob like never before. The film also launched several careers and has managed to endure.
In 1990, the film Goodfellas stunned audiences with its raw portrayal of New York mob life. The iconic film tells the story of Henry Hill, a mobster and a member of New York City's Lucchese crime family. It also takes us through his wild and crazy escapades with Tommy Devito and Jimmy Conway. But did you know the original cut was more graphic than the final cut? However, the film had to be properly readjusted after a failed test audience review. Join us in this video as we unravel the infamous scenes from the Goodfellas that didn't make it to our screens. Before we delve into the scenes that were changed to make the final cut, let us first familiarize and remind ourselves of the iconic Goodfellas film. The Goodfellas film. Goodfellas, released in 1990, received favorable reviews from fans and critics alike. It is often regarded as Martin Scorsese's best film. This is hardly surprising, given the degree of artistic brilliance and minute details that went into creating this masterpiece, which is certainly deserving of such associations. As with any cinematic masterpiece, a great deal of care was taken to ensure that Goodfellas was the ideal representation of mob life. This film, unlike most mob films, does not attempt to depict the lavish lifestyle of the mobs. Rather, it walks the audience through the graphic details, violent confrontations, and emotional interactions that take place deep within the criminal justice system. The iconic film had performances by major Hollywood stars such as Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro, Paul Sorvino, and Joe Pesci. However, the director's original vision was not exactly what was shown on screen. You see, maintaining the delicate balance between artistic expression and commercial response is an ongoing challenge that all directors face while working in the film industry. To make the film appealing to the general audience, without sacrificing the integrity of the story, scenes had to be re-examined and certain plot points had to be changed. So, what were these infamous scenes? Keep watching to find out. The plot behind the iconic Goodfellas. In 1995, young Henry Hill is drawn to mob life in his Brooklyn neighborhood. He began working for Paulie Cicero and his gang, which includes Tommy Devito and Jimmy Conway. Henry starts off by selling stolen goods for Jimmy before moving on to committing bigger crimes. In the 1960s, the trio started to spend most nights at the Copacabana nightclub with women. Henry dates and ends up marrying Karen Friedman, a Jewish woman who was not pleased about his criminal life, but eventually falls for his glamorous lifestyle, despite her parents' disapproval. In 1970, Billy Batts, a member of the Gambino crime family who had been recently freed from prison, insults Tommy at a nightclub owned by Henry. Tommy and Jimmy brutally kill Billy. Knowing fully well they could face severe retaliation, they decide to bury Billy's body in upstate New York. 6 months later, they had to move the decomposing corpse when they learned the burial site would be developed. In 1974, Karen threatens Henry's mistress, Janice, and holds Henry at gunpoint. Henry moves in with Janice, but Paulie insists that he return to Karen after collecting a debt from a gambler in Tampa with Jimmy. Upon returning, Henry and Jimmy get arrested after being turned in by the gambler's sister, an FBI typist, and they get sentenced to 10 years in prison. In order to support his family, Henry has Karen smuggle in harmful substance, which he sells to a fellow inmate from Pittsburgh. 4 years later, Henry is paroled and expands his cocaine business with Tommy and Jimmy, against Paulie's orders. Jimmy puts together a team to raid the Lufthansa vault at John F. Kennedy International Airport, stealing $6 million in jewelry and cash. After some team members spend their money recklessly on expensive items against Jimmy's orders, and the getaway truck got found by the police, Jimmy kills most of them except Tommy and Henry. In 1979, Tommy is deceived into believing he has become a made man and is killed after walking into a room of the ceremony, partly as payback for killing bats. By 1980, Henry became paranoid and addicted to harmful substance. He sets up another drug deal with his Pittsburgh associates, but is arrested by agents and put in jail. After bailing him out, Karen reveals to him that she flushed $60,000 worth of cocaine down the toilet during an FBI raid to prevent them from finding it, now leaving them broke and penniless. Feeling betrayed by Henry, Paulie gives him $3,200 and cuts ties with him. Henry meets up with Jimmy, who asks him to embark on a hit, making Henry suspicious. Realizing that Jimmy had plans to have him killed, Henry decides to switch sides and become an informant. He is put in the witness protection program with his family, testifies against Jimmy and Paulie, and moves to a quiet neighborhood to follow through with the witness protection program. Henry describes his unhappiness in leaving his gangster life to live a boring and ordinary schnook. The Cold Awakening. From the outset of the film Goodfellas, audiences are thrown into the turbulent world of the mafia. The film opens with Tommy Devito, played by Joe Pesci, Jimmy Conway, played by Robert De Niro, and Henry Hill, played by Ray Liotta, driving through the night, with music playing in the background, and an unusual thud can also be heard. Concerning this noise, the trio pulled the car over, got out, and opened the trunk. The camera then cuts to a man who had been badly beaten and appeared to be near death. In a moment that both intrigued and shocked the audience, Tommy takes out a knife and stabs the man 3 times before Jimmy shoots him multiple times to kill him. This opening scene, which takes place before the opening credits, injects Goodfellas with the brutal and gruesome violence that provides the viewers with an introduction into the different personalities of the 3 gangsters, highlighting Tommy's unpredictable cruelty, Henry's aloof attentiveness, and the composed efficiency that punctuates Jimmy's character throughout the movie. However, the most alarming part of this scene is the eventual revelation that the man who had been killed in the car trunk was none other than Billy Batts, played by Frank Vincent. Billy Batts, a minor antagonist in the movie and a member of the Gambino crime family, is a character who meets a tragic end. And what's even more astounding was the real reason Billy was killed, as was revealed later in the movie. The trio, Henry, Jimmy, and Tommy, had met with Billy at a bar owned by Henry, where Billy had been celebrating his release from prison. But what started as a simple social gathering quickly took a terrible turn when Billy decided to lecture Tommy on how he used to be a shoeshine boy prior to his venture into the gangster life. The insult was later punctuated with Billy's iconic line to Tommy, "Now go home and get your shoebox," which was the insult that sealed his fate. But this wasn't exactly how this scene was supposed to go, according to the initial plan. Initially, the scene was scripted differently, as seen by a test audience. Tommy was supposed to stab Billy 7 times on screen. This was to accurately depict the gory scenes that sometimes accompany the gangster life. But during the first screening of the movie before a test audience, the reception to this scene wasn't exactly positive. The scenes were so brutally depicted that some of the members of the test audience were said to have walked out from this very first scene. You will agree that such a reaction would be pretty bad for any movie, not to mention such an iconic cinematic piece like Goodfellas. From this first review, it was back to the drawing board for director Martin Scorsese, along with Nicholas Pileggi and Irwin Winkler, the movie's producer, who brainstormed on how to reduce the gore and violence while maintaining the integrity of the storyline, as attaining this delicate balance was very essential because not only was the film supposed to be a work of art, but it also had to be received with open arms by the audience. To combat this problem, it was decided that a compromise would be reached, and the scenes would be slightly adjusted to make for more comfortable viewing, without sacrificing the core message. Instead of 7 stabbings, it was reduced to 3 on-screen stabs, with the sounds of the rest filling the viewer's imagination. This ensured the scene's intensity was maintained, even though only 3 stabs were shown. It also allowed the viewer to engage with the plot, creating an immersive experience as intended. When Goodfellas was released, this first scene became iconic, receiving public praise for depicting the brutality of mafia life. It also prepared the audience for the experience they were about to have. It introduced the tone and pace of the story, giving the movie a sense of realism often hard to achieve in gangster and mafia movies. Although this change may seem insignificant, every seasoned filmmaker knows that little things make a big difference. The circumstances surrounding Spider's death. If you're a Goodfellas fan, there's a high chance that Spider's death is your most memorable scene. For many, this moment remains unforgettable. But did you know that this iconic bloody scene nearly didn't make it to the final version? Goodfellas is often considered one of the bloodiest movies of its time. Its graphic scenes were portrayed with stark realism, resembling a documentary more than a typical film. Due to its violent nature, Warner Brothers initially urged Martin Scorsese to remove the important scene depicting Spider's death. Even though the main focus of the storyline centered on Henry Hill's character, Scorsese opted to delve deeper into one of the crew's most dangerous members, Tommy. Tommy was infamous for his terrible temper and extreme impulsiveness, 2 flaws that ultimately led to his demise. An important moment in Tommy's story in Goodfellas was when he brutally murdered Spider, portrayed by Michael Imperioli. Though Spider had a minor role in the film, his part became one of the most unforgettable scenes in this iconic cinematic masterpiece. In this scene, Spider served drinks to Tommy, Henry, and Jimmy as they played card games. However, Spider, the bartender, forgot to bring Tommy's drink. Seeing this as an insult, Tommy quickly showed his displeasure. The situation escalated as the rest of the crew burst into laughter, and Tommy got into an argument with Spider. Tommy ended up shooting Spider in the foot, but the drama didn't end there. Later, Spider returned with a cast on his foot and served them drinks again. Tommy then began to mock Spider's injury, angering him further. In a fit of rage, Spider insulted Tommy, earning Jimmy's approval. This was when things took a deadly turn. The exchange ignited a fire in Tommy, leading to him shooting Spider multiple times, ultimately killing him. Warner Brothers had reservations about the violent depiction of Spider's death, fearing it would make Tommy too unlikable and affect the audience's perception of the gangster. However, that was precisely the scene's purpose. The character of Spider was created to showcase Tommy's brutality and cold-heartedness. This wasn't a romanticized portrayal of the gangster lifestyle. It aimed to show the horrifying reality of being part of the mafia. The scene accurately portrayed Tommy's character. He had described himself as a total psychopath. Therefore, it was crucial for his character development to demonstrate this trait on screen. Furthermore, the scene was necessary to explain later events in the film. Scorsese argued that cutting Spider's death scene could alter the audience's perception of Tommy, as it aimed to depict his emotional nature. Despite the studio's concerns about the film being too graphic, Scorsese stood his ground, explaining several reasons for keeping the scene. The studio worried that making the movie too graphic would sideline a category of viewers, making it appealing to only a select set of people. While this may sound like a good thing in the world of cinema, it's actually not. But seasoned filmmakers aim to cater to a broad audience. Fortunately, Scorsese convinced Warner Brothers that Spider's death scene was vital for the story's development. When Goodfellas was finally released, it became clear that the fears were unfounded. Viewers had no problem with the gory details of Spider's death, which was a huge relief. Ultimately, the scene contributed to the movie's legacy as an unapologetic portrayal of the harsh reality behind gang life. Whether you love it or hate it, you can't deny that the gory scene played a significant role in making Goodfellas the iconic masterpiece it remains today. Catherine Scorsese's guest appearance. One of the most beloved scenes from Goodfellas features Martin Scorsese's mother, Catherine Scorsese, portraying Tommy DeVito's mother. In this scene, Tommy, Jimmy, and Henry surprise Tommy's mom at her house in the middle of the night, as she hadn't seen her son in a long time. Catherine warmly embraces the trio, remarking on how long it's been since her son's last visit. They all share a quick meal, finding a brief moment of peace amidst a chaotic world. However, this scene was nearly cut from the final film. After test screenings received negative reviews and audience members began leaving early, the studio became worried that the movie would be poorly received. Some viewers left angry notes about the graphic scenes, indicating that the film incited too much anger, which was not the intended outcome. The Catherine Scorsese scene was the infamous scene that almost got cut from Goodfellas. Some audience members felt it was too long and needed to be removed. The studio also believed it slowed the movie's pace, feeling out of place in a film characterized by relentless violence. The warm, motherly scene seemed like a distraction from the dramatic and fast-paced narrative. However, after further examination of audience reviews, the studio found that most people actually loved the scene. It humanized the characters, showing a different side hidden behind the gore and violence. It revealed that, despite being cold-blooded killers with no remorse, they were still human. Tommy's mom's acceptance of her son wasn't born out of ignorance. She knew he was a gangster but embraced him anyway. In that moment, he wasn't a raging lunatic who just murdered someone over a simple insult. He was a son in his mother's arms. The scene provided a break from the vicious cycle of violence that dominated the movie from beginning to end. It was a breath of fresh air in a world of senseless killings and mob violence. Martin Scorsese later revealed that this iconic scene was heavily improvised. The only instruction given to Catherine Scorsese was to welcome her long-lost son home. Once filming began, the scene flowed naturally, culminating in what has been described as one of the most unforgettable moments in the otherwise bloody movie. It turned out that Tommy's visit wasn't driven by a desire to see his mom. He was on his way to bury Billy Batts, whom he had just beaten to a pulp. His visit was to pick up a shovel as the trio planned to bury the mobster. The knife Tommy used in Billy's murder also came from his mom's kitchen, making the scene an indispensable part of the storyline. The arrest that shaped young Henry's future. Before the audience sees the backplate of a Pontiac Grand Prix speeding along the highway at night, the opening image in Goodfellas informs us that the story is based on true events. However, not every depiction in the movie was accurate. While an attempt was made to maintain the integrity of the story by aligning the on-screen Henry Hill with the real-life version, some scenes were sensationalized, ignored, or completely changed. Important details were kept, but names and other small details were altered. For example, Jimmy Burke became Jimmy Conway, Tommy DeSimone became Tommy DeVito, and Paul Vario became Paul Cicero. The only exception was Henry, whose full name was used throughout the movie. One of the significant moments in Goodfellas occurs at the beginning, where we see young Henry Hill, played by Christopher Serrone, start his rise into the world of crime. In these early scenes, he begins working for Paul Cicero's crew, running odd errands for them. His simple tasks quickly escalate into serious criminal activities, leading to his first arrest. Young Henry starts working alongside a young Tommy. One day, while trying to sell cigarettes, the cops arrive. Tommy runs away, but Henry isn't so lucky. During interrogation, Henry refuses to give any information about his superiors or the source of the illegal goods. Jimmy later praises Henry for staying silent with the iconic line, "Never rat on your friends and always keep your mouth shut." But is this what happened in real life? Not exactly. According to the real events, Henry wasn't working with Tommy at the time, as the real Henry was actually 7 years older than Tommy DeSimone. The real Henry Hill's first arrest wasn't as dramatic as depicted in the movie. When Henry was 16, he and Lenny, Paul Vario's son, tried to use a stolen credit card to get snow tires for Paul's brother's wife. Upon returning to the house, they were apprehended by 2 police detectives. However, just like in the movie, Henry refused to talk, staying true to the code of silence. The only thing he revealed was his name. Thanks to Paul's attorney, Henry was released on bail. His silence in the face of serious police intimidation earned him the respect of Jimmy Burke and Paul Vario, who saw great potential in him. Because this was less sensational than the movie version, a new story fit for the audience was created, and everyone loved it. This wasn't necessarily a problem, as the movie wasn't meant to be a biography of Henry's life. Instead, it was designed to pick the necessary bits and pieces that would make the story stand out. The audience didn't mind this alteration, as it wasn't a downgrade, but an upgrade from the real-life version. Tommy DeVito and Henry Hill's childhood in Goodfellas. In Goodfellas, Henry Hill and Tommy DeVito worked together as teenagers, and their budding friendship became an inseparable bond. Martin Scorsese's version of the story puts the 2 mob associates on the same side, working closely with Jimmy in various illegal activities from the very start. Henry was a loyal friend. Once, he served as a decoy for Tommy, putting himself on the line to allow Tommy to escape arrest. Over the years, their friendship grew significantly. But did the real Henry Hill and Thomas DeSimone meet as teenagers? In reality, Henry was 7 years older than Tommy, so they did not have the same teenage friendship portrayed in the film. The movie version was an artistic choice to enhance the story's dramatic effect, making it more engaging for the audience. Henry instantly becomes attached to Jimmy after seeing him arrive at a party where Henry was in charge of the food and drinks. From then on, they began to work together. Jimmy then introduced Henry to Tommy, who was around the same age as Henry. However, according to the book Wise Guy by Nicholas Pileggi, on which the movie is based, this was inaccurate. The real-life Tommy was introduced to Paul Vario at the age of 15, by which time Henry had already built a reputation working for Paulie and his crew. In the book, Henry described Tommy as a skinny kid wearing a wise guy suit and a pencil mustache. Tommy then began working under Paulie, Jimmy, and, of course, Henry. Even though they actually worked together when they were still quite young, their working relationship wasn't exactly as portrayed in Goodfellas. However, the trio of Henry, Jimmy, and Tommy were involved in many illegal activities in real life, including truck hijackings, fencing stolen properties, and more. Some depictions in the movie had a remarkable resemblance to real-life events. For example, one of Henry's closest friends in the film, Tommy, was the first to die. Just like in the film, the real-life Tommy was also tricked into believing that he was going to be made. But that wasn't the case. He mysteriously disappeared, and the location of his remains unknown to this day. It is still unclear what happened to Tommy and who was responsible for his disappearance. There are many theories about what exactly happened to Tommy DeSimone, but the most widely accepted one is that his disappearance was in retaliation for the murders of Billy Batts and Ronald Girothi, who were both close associates of John Gotti. Because of this, many believe that Gotti himself may have murdered Tommy. while others claim that Paul Vario informed the Gambino crew that Tommy was involved in the deaths of Bats and Jerothy. Throughout the Goodfellas film, the chemistry between Ray Liotta and Joe Pesci was remarkable. It felt like they knew the real-life Tommy and Henry personally. They brought so much life into the story, enabling it to reach the heights it has today. The two characters, connected by their love for criminality, broke rules and often got away with it. They ravaged the land, etching their names painfully in the hearts of their victims. The near-accurate depiction of the bloody nature of the mob exposed the world to another side of organized crime that many aren't familiar with. Truly, Goodfellas deserves the throne as one of the greatest cinematic masterpieces ever actualized and conceptualized throughout history. Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Now, back to the video. Let us talk about the real Henry Hill's time in the Army. Henry Hill's time in the Army. One significant chapter of Henry Hill's life that never made it into the Goodfellas movie was his time in the military. Few people are aware that in June 1960, at just 17 years old, the real Henry Hill enlisted in the United States Army. He was assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division, stationed at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. But Hill didn't join the Army out of patriotic duty or a desire to serve his country. Instead, it was a calculated move to stay under the radar. During that period, the FBI was intensifying its efforts to clamp down on organized crime, especially following the highly publicized 1957 Appalachian Mob Summit. That summit triggered a wave of investigations into the mafia's influence across various sectors, including unions and legitimate businesses. As a result, nearly 5,000 members and associates from the 5 major New York crime families were identified and placed under scrutiny. Henry anxiously scanned the list for any mention of his mentor and boss, Paul Vario, a high-ranking member of the Lucchese family. To his relief, Vario's name was absent. That discovery gave Hill a false sense of security. But even in uniform, Hill never truly left the criminal world behind. He continued engaging in illicit activities while in the Army, selling extra rations from the mess hall for profit, offering high-interest loans to fellow soldiers, and trafficking in tax-free cigarettes to boost his income. Though his actions clearly violated military regulations, Hill managed to fly under the radar for some time. Eventually, though, his luck ran out. He didn't get caught for the usual hustle, but was instead arrested for stealing a sheriff's car and instigating a violent brawl involving Marines and a civilian. This incident landed him in the stockade, where he served a 2-month sentence. These disciplinary issues stuck with him and followed him beyond his Army discharge. Upon returning to New York, Hill wasted no time diving deeper into the criminal underworld. This period marked the beginning of the most infamous and active phase of his mob career. He became involved in a wide array of serious offenses: arson, truck hijackings, extortion, loan sharking, and running a stolen car operation. This era not only solidified his status within the Lucchese family, but also laid the foundation for the events that would eventually be dramatized in Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas. So, why was this part of Henry Hill's story omitted from the film? While no official explanation has been given, many speculate that Scorsese made a deliberate choice to keep the film focused. Goodfellas was never intended to serve as a comprehensive biography. Instead, it aimed to paint a gritty, unfiltered picture of life in the mafia, with Hill's story providing the perfect point of entry. Including his military chapter might have diluted the pacing or distracted from the film's main arc, which was carefully designed to keep viewers riveted from start to finish. One scene that perfectly captures the film's emotional intensity is the legendary "How am I funny?" moment, featuring Joe Pesci as Tommy DeVito. In this unforgettable exchange, Tommy is entertaining the group with a wild story, and Henry, played by Ray Liotta, tells him he's a funny guy. What follows is a masterclass in tension. Tommy suddenly shifts from charismatic to confrontational, demanding to know how exactly Henry meant that. Funny how? Like I'm a clown? I amuse you? The room freezes as Henry fumbles for a response, clearly caught off guard. What makes this scene even more powerful is that it was inspired by a real-life event from Joe Pesci's past. Before making it big in Hollywood, Pesci worked at a restaurant that was a regular hangout for mobsters. One night, he casually told one of the wise guys that he was a funny guy. The mobster didn't take the comment well, reacting with a stone-cold glare that shook Pesci. Years later, that unnerving moment found its way into Goodfellas. Scorsese's approach to directing the scene was just as clever. He kept the full extent of the improvisation a secret, sharing the concept only with Pesci and Liotta. This meant the rest of the cast had no idea what was coming, which added a layer of authenticity to their reactions. Ray Liotta's nervous laughter and confusion, completely real. That spontaneous energy gave the scene a raw, believable quality that helped make it one of the film's most iconic moments. And this wasn't a one-off. Throughout Goodfellas, Scorsese masterfully wove in real anecdotes and experiences shared by Henry Hill during interviews. These grounded the story in reality and gave the film its reputation as one of the most authentic portrayals of the mafia ever made. It became more than just a gangster movie. It evolved into a powerful character study, a brutal cautionary tale, and a cultural phenomenon. Since its release, Goodfellas has only grown in stature. It's frequently ranked among the greatest films of all time, praised for its gripping narrative, unforgettable characters, and uncompromising look at mob life. From Henry Hill's overlooked military service to Joe Pesci's improvised moment of menace, each element contributes to a larger legacy, one that has cemented the film's place in cinematic history. What about you? Were you surprised to learn about these untold parts of Henry Hill's life and the real events that inspired scenes in the movie? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this classic piece of American cinema. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. Tap on the link that pops up on your screen to catch up on your favorite celebrity stories. See you there.